I'd like to go ahead and open tonight's meeting and ask for public comment on our closed session item. Do we have any public comment on the closed session item? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so closing public comment, and then Andy, do you want to take us into closed session?
Sure. This is a closed session for public employee appointment or employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 and OGO Section 17A11(2). The name or title of position is the city clerk. We can now go into closed session, and the first item of business will be to take a vote to remain in closed session, and that's a reportable action.
All right, thank you. So are we all good going into closed session? Okay, so move. Report on the closed session.
Yes, thank you. We had a closed session, and the report out under the open government ordinance is the vote to stay in closed session, which was unanimous. Other than that, there is no reportable action from the closed session.
All right, thank you. So can I move on to the Pledge of Allegiance then?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, and I failed to ask someone to lead us in the pledge, so Mr. Hilton, would you like to do that? All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Invocation, is Greg Quirk here? Well, if he's not here now, we're going to move on. Okay, how about we go to City Clerk's report on posting the agenda and roll call.
Tonight's meeting agenda was duly noticed and posted in accordance with Government Code 54954.2. Roll call. Council members Armendariz,
Present.
Bracco,
Present.
Hilton,
Here.
Leroy Munoz,
Present.
Marks,
Here.
Tovar,
Here.
Mayor Blankley.
Here. All right, thank you. Orders of the day? Anything? All right, ceremonial items. So I skipped employee introductions. Do we have some employees? Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. I'd like to introduce to you tonight Jose Cedano, our latest engineer in our engineering department. He has earned his civil engineering degree at San Jose State University. He entered into an internship with Nino and Moore, a private geotechnical consulting firm, during his third year of school. He's worked part-time during his school year and clocked in his fair share of overtime during the busy summertime. Upon graduation, he was picked up by Nino Moore as a full-time staff engineer and project manager. He brings his helpful team player attitude to assist in developing great communication and understanding between his team. He's a hard-working individual, aims to help push through the public works immense workload and meet deadlines. He was born and raised in Gilroy. He did not leave his city until he moved to San Jose to get closer to school and work. Since then, he has moved back to Gilroy and to his grandparents' home with family and his dog Buddy. In his spare time, he likes to explore the realms of knowledge that he hasn't studied, such as computers, automobile engines, and Native American history. He also enjoys listening to music from around the world and learning new dance moves from other cultures.
I'm excited to be back in Gilroy and to serve my community.
Welcome. Thank you. Are there any others? One? Okay, sorry, my notes said two. Okay. Great. Moving on to ceremonial items. All right, I asked for this. We have a proclamation for United Against Hate Week. I asked for this proclamation so that Gilroy, with the approval of the City Council, could take part in United Against Hate Week through messaging that supports zero tolerance for hate crimes. So with that, I would like to read, unless a council member has anything to say, I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Okay. Whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strength comes from its diversity, and whereas the Constitution enshrines equally on all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political views, And whereas the City of Gilroy wishes to affirm its commitment to the well-being and safety of all its diverse communities, including Black, Indigenous, and people of color, Asian, American, Pacific Islander, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning plus, and all others. And whereas the City of Gilroy wishes to ensure that all members of our diverse communities are not alone and that they can speak out to help stop the spread of bigotry. And whereas there has been a recent rise of hate crimes, some notable for their violence and cruelty, hate incidents, and hate speech throughout the United States and the greater San Francisco Bay Area. And whereas the recent rise of violence is part of a larger history of violence, and we must work together to create community-centered solutions that stop the violence in all communities. And whereas the City of Gilroy stands with all diverse communities and calls on all constituents and leaders to join us in condemning racist, homophobic, and harassing attacks in all forms, and renewing our commitment to speak out against such attacks, defend and protect those targeted, and seek out and punish those who commit hate crimes against any members of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Gilroy does hereby proclaim the week of November 14th through the 20th, 2021, as United Against Hate Week, and that passed and adopted this 18th day of October 2021 by the following roll call. So, do we need to vote? Following roll call? No. Okay. Then that's it. That's the proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. We have an annual presentation from our Library Commission, going to be done by Sumana Reddy.
Thank you so much, and I'm here with our new head librarian, Cassandra Wong. Very much appreciate the opportunity to present. We are back in, after a very difficult year, and we're proud to be a late leader in safe reopening practices for both employees and the community. Our staggered approach has provided prioritized services with in-person lobby availability beginning in September 2020. Regular service hours are hoped to begin in November. There are no Sundays at this time, but our hours were just extended Monday through Wednesday until 1 to 9 p.m. and Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 6. So continuing to serve the community in that way. And that commitment just hasn't wavered. From shelter in place to reopening library services, the focus has been on addressing the needs of the community. When services were needed the most, our library continued outreach to local schools without serious interruption. We continued services to Ochoa Migrant Center and Power Schools during these uncertain times. And grab-and-go meal service began as a stopgap measure to prevent food insecure families with school-aged children with meals. And beginning in June 2020, that program has run for over a year until August 2021. And during this time, almost 20,000 meals were served. Staffers have pulled together to curate and present programming that provides a global perspective for our entire district while highlighting our local community. The Gilroy Library staff have presented programs featuring local artists, entrepreneurs, leaders to a growing virtual audience, and topics have included the future of agriculture, discussions with authors like Francisco Jimenez, and bilingual story times. The library provided an array of grab-and-go art kits for all ages, STEM and STEAM kits through Rotary and Library Foundation grants, and the need for in-person library service was a high priority as well. So to prevent the widening of that digital divide, the focus was providing technology for patrons through computer accessibility, printing, and expanded Wi-Fi coverage, and all of that was achieved as soon as it was possible to safely do so. And so the impact has included 1,638 new card holders, over 300 new non-resident card holders, over 1,300 new to area users, over 404,000, nearly 404,000 items circulated since July 2020. And a number of other services were set up, including the Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month featuring Folklorico by Lupeños de San Jose, and a number of other programs. So, to quickly summarize, here we are with a district that has an outlook and commitments that reflect our priorities, lessons learned during the past 2 years, transforming lives by enabling lifelong learning and community engagement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hang on. We have a question.
So I just wanted to build on something that Sumana shared right there. You know, I go to the library all the time, and I have the overdue fines to prove it. But I can remember last year, kind of really in the depths of COVID, when most everything was really shut down. And I remember when you guys finally reopened just the lobby, you know, kind of area where you go, you wait, they bring the books to you and everything. And it's a small thing, but that was really kind of one of the first activities in the community where you could actually go outside and see real live people and have even a very limited interaction. And that was just such a special thing and such a cool thing. So really want to thank you for all you've done for the community, especially through this difficult time. You were faced with any number of challenges, but you found a way to make it work. And you were there for the community when they needed you. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you. And, you know, our librarian here, she teared up in talking about that to our library commission. And that was so emotional for me that they care so much that she would get teary about opening the lobby. So.
And I have to say, our admin department with the district has done a superb job in really weighing the needs and also really looking at safety concerns and issues and making sure people feel welcome back to the library. We'd love to see you all there. Please come get your library cards. We'll see you tomorrow getting your cards. And council as well. I hope you all have your library cards. But it's been a really wonderful opportunity to be there for the community and bring that stability back in these uncertain times. And again, we've been an early adopter. So there are counties all throughout the Bay Area, even in other states, who have looked at our reopening plan and said, hey, this seems to work. How's it going? What's your feedback? And being a leader in that is something that we really take a lot of pride in. So please, know that's all possible through your support. So thank you for doing all this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of retirement proclamations. The first one is for Police Officer Ryan Holler. I don't believe he's here, but I'm going to read the proclamation. Is the police chief not here either? Okay, that's fine. I'll read it. Proclamation of the City of Gilroy. Whereas Ryan Holler has served the City of Gilroy and the Gilroy community for 23 years, and Ryan began his career as a deputy with the San Benito County Sheriff's Office in 1994 and transferred to Gilroy Police Department in 1998. And Ryan held numerous collateral duty assignments over his career to include field training officer, defensive tactics instructor, explorer advisor, and less lethal instructor. And whereas Ryan served as a canine handler for 10 years with his partner Cento, or I would say Cento, and served 3 years as a school resource officer working in the Gilroy Unified School District. And whereas Ryan was dedicated himself to the highest standards of professionalism and excellence as an officer with the Gilroy Police Department, and whereas on October 20th, 2021, Officer Ryan Holler retired from the Gilroy Police Department with a sincere gratitude and appreciation of the Gilroy City Council for his years of dedicated public service to our fine city. Now, therefore, I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, and on behalf of the City Council, the citizens and employees of Gilroy, join in thanking Ryan Holler for his commitment of service and wish him well in retirement for years to come. Okay, and then we have a second one for Police Sergeant Jason Kadluboski. All right, here we go. Whereas Jason Kadluboski has served the City of Gilroy for 24 years, and whereas Jason began his law enforcement career with the Morgan Hill Police Department in 1993 and came to Gilroy in 1997, and whereas Jason has held numerous collateral duty assignments over his career, to include field training officer, mounted enforcement unit, special operations group entry team, sniper team leader, and SWAT commander. And whereas Jason held positions in specialized units to better serve our community, such as anti-crime team and investigations. And whereas Jason is retiring from the position of police sergeant and has left his legacy as one of public service, teamwork, compassion, and dedication. And whereas on October 4th, 2021, Sergeant Jason Kadluboski has retired from the Gilroy Police Department with the sincere gratitude and appreciation of the Gilroy City Council for his years of dedicated public service to our fine city. Now, therefore, I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, and on behalf of the City Council, the citizens, and the employees of Gilroy, join in thanking Jason Kadluboski for his commitment of service and wish him well in retirement for years to come. Okay, thank you. That's it for the fun stuff. All right, now we're moving on to item 4, which is presentations to the council. This is a public comment this is the time for members of the public to speak on anything that is not on the agenda, but over which the City Council has jurisdiction. I'm going to take a pause and ask that anyone who is here wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda, please fill out a speaker card and hand it to the city clerk so that we know how many people are interested in speaking. And if that has been done, then I'm going to ask our city clerk how many speaker cards you have. 12 speaker cards. Okay, so I'm going to ask that everybody try to limit their comments to 1 to 2 minutes. It should be doable. That way we don't take up too much time with this one item. Okay? So we'll go ahead and call the first public speaker.
Our first speaker is Bill Ramel.
Bill, that's you. She just called you, Bill. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I'm here to talk a little bit about the new ball, of course, pickleball, and I'm a former tennis player. I, in fact, developed a tennis club about 50 years ago and enjoyed it very much and still enjoy it. They're nice people, good tennis, but now we have a little conflict in geographics. The city staff has worked out a very good agreement with the tennis club in that we have 2 courts, 5 and 6 at Los Animas Court, that are marked out for pickleball as well as tennis. And we have probably at least, we meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that's the morning group at 8:30, and the afternoon group has equal number of numbers, and our numbers are growing. And mostly, not mostly, but a lot of seniors. You notice the white hair. That's the reason I gave up tennis. Pickleball is just as much fun, and I get a good workout. And better than that, the sociability of meeting a new group of people and letting them help me learn a new game, and that's very good. So my intent to speak to you is that you could work with staff, and in the event that the resurfacing of courts 5 and 6 are going to happen this week. In fact, the lock is on now. We can't play pickleball. We understand that. We would like the staff to, in the interim, until we find our own home and our own court, if they could continue the same relationship that they've been going on wherever. It's not ideal for us, and I know it's not ideal for tennis, but both of us compromise, and at least we're happy. I don't know. I understand. Okay, time's up. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be visible for you, but I guess it's not. So
I
thank
get a
you.
little windy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Do we have a timer that they can see?
It's not connecting
I
through
think-
for some reason.
Okay.
I might have just got it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you all to please watch your own clock unless you want my little alarm to go off on you. That's fine, too.
I got my timer as well.
Okay, so who is the next speaker?
Cheryl Ellenberg.
Good evening, everyone. I am a longtime resident of Gilroy. I know you on many fronts, whether it's at the chamber or through my children, through various community service events that I have been participating in over the last 15 years. You don't see me very often, especially at city council meetings, but today is important. It's important to talk about pickleball and tennis in Gilroy and how everyone has a place. And I really want to make sure that a solution, a good solution, comes to both groups. I have a master's in public health. I've been running prevention and wellness programs in public health for over 25 years in New York and in California. And there's science to making sure that the well-being of people is incorporating people of all ages. It doesn't matter if it's pickleball or tennis. If there's a solution that we could find, I believe that Sunrise was a possibility for pickleball to be for their home, but the lighting was not sufficient and the parking was not sufficient. So I urge the City Council to try to help the group, the pickleball group of all ages, to find a solution that is palatable to everybody, because it just doesn't make sense that one should be against another. We should be able to do this together. I work with over 1,000 4th and 5th graders every week, and if they can do it, we can do it. So that's what my ask is, that if we could find a good solution for all of the pickleball and tennis players in our community here in Gilroy, so that we don't have to go to San Juan or San Jose or anywhere else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Our next speaker is Steve Ellenberg.
Okay, hopefully you can see your clock. Hi, Steve.
I don't see it.
Okay,
there it is.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm Steve Ellenberg. Cheryl's my wife. My kids have volunteered more than 2,000 hours of community service time to the people up here and to other organizations within Gilroy. As a former tennis player, I can tell you that unlike tennis, pickleball is actually a growing sport, and players of all mobility levels, regardless of their ability to cover the length of the court, can play. Recently, I've been diagnosed with osteoarthritis in both of my hips, and as much as I want to play tennis, I can no longer cover the court, and I can no longer play. I can still play pickleball. Recently, there was an email sent out that we would no longer be able to play in Las Animas, and to me, that sounds like the city of Gilroy is my question is, does the city of Gilroy intend to intentionally prevent people like me and other less abled people from using city-owned facilities? Unless the city of Gilroy is intentionally looking to exclude groups of specific age or ability from using city-owned recreational facilities, there needs to be a permanent home for designated pickleball courts. With that in mind, I ask the city incorporate permanent pickleball courts and lines in the immediate plans to resurface the 2 courts at Las Animas. This would allow both tennis and pickleball players to play on the courts simultaneously without any inconvenience to either sport. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Matt Bulumini.
Good evening. Sorry about my attire. I drove all the way down to San Juan Bautista this afternoon to play pickleball because our courts aren't open, but they have a pretty nice facility down there, and I'm hoping we can do something like that here. It's a huge growing sport. I've been going to tournaments in Vegas and Boise, and former racquetball, handball player. It's just a game that it's addicting. It's just an awesome game, and we met a lot of nice tennis players over there. Some were very welcoming, and some like, hey, you guys don't belong here. So it's been just kind of a difficult situation for us to play over there. Again, we were told that these courts are really for pickleball, or excuse me, for tennis only, and you can actually put 4 pickleball courts and 1 tennis court just because the size. San Jose has like 6 or 7 dedicated courts all around. Even that, like I just said, the tiny little town of San Juan Bautista has 6 really nice courts. So I'm just hoping Gilroy can do something. You know, we have a lot of people come in, whether it's the outlets or, you know, a lot of things that draw people to Gilroy. I'm hoping pickleball can be one of those things, as it's just such a large growing sport. As time progressed, when we were talking with the tennis folks over there, they made a point that they contributed a lot of money to the city for that, and I just was wondering, you know, why Gilroy, the city, I guess, took the money from the tennis club, which is fine, I guess, but those really are public courts, right? We should all be allowed to use those courts. So we're very thankful for the tennis club for giving, you know, the city that money for those courts, but like most other cities, they're maintaining their own parks and recs. They're not taking outside funds for a public type facility. My one last point before we go, it just feels like some of the tennis folks over there, I don't want to say bullying might be too strong of a word, but we just want...
Sorry, your time is up.
Yeah, let me just finish this one last point.
Well,
we're not asking for Los Animas. We're not asking for exclusivity, but just that we could all get along, that lines can be painted on both until maybe we can have our own little facility. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Our next speaker is Becky Azevedo.
It's hard to hear over the clapping. Can we not do that, please? It's not an applause thing. It's okay.
Becky Azevedo?
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I need your help to find a place to play pickleball outdoors in the city of Gilroy. I've joined several meetings with the Parks and Recreation Department to try to find a solution, but I've still not been notified of a place that I can play outdoors. On the surface, the solution seems simple, just adding lines to existing tennis courts. I'm not privy to the history of tennis in Gilroy or why sharing tennis courts for two recognized court sports is such a problem. From my own personal experience, I can share with you that it was extremely disheartening for me to receive a letter last week from City of Gilroy Recreation Division that I'm no longer welcome to play pickleball at Los Alamos Veterans Park. As a working mother of two young kids during a pandemic, playing pickleball outdoors at Los Alamos Veterans Park has been extremely important to my mental health and physical health. I look forward to your help to finding a solution for playing pickleball outdoors in my hometown of Gilroy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next speaker?
Ellen Zito.
I'm a pickleball grandma. And I just wanted to point out that I've played pickleball in Hollister, and they have approximately a population of 38,000 people, and they have 3 dedicated pickleball courts. And if you're not familiar with it, it's different from a tennis court that has the tennis lines and pickleball lines on the same court. Dedicated courts only have pickleball lines. Okay, and I also have been to San Juan Bautista. They have a population approximately 2,000, and they have 6 dedicated pickleball courts. And here we are in Gilroy, 0. So, as you can see, it doesn't really make sense that a population of Gilroy, approximately 57,000, and we have 0 courts that are dedicated to pickleball. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Barton.
Hi, guys. Hey, thanks for letting me speak tonight. We'll keep it pretty brief here. I'm a pickleball player, but I want to let you know I also played tennis over probably somewhere between 22, 25 years, so I know what tennis is all about. I've been around a few clubs, played a lot of public courts also by the same standpoint. But I just wanted to mention I'm here tonight basically because I believe the city of Gilroy public court should remain open to pickleball players, and I believe both tennis and pickleball players can play in conjunction with each other on the courts that are currently open. I have to say one thing, I do respect tennis, so I respect the Gilroy Tennis Club, but the courts at Los Animas are public city courts and should be shared by all residents of Gilroy at all times, including kids. Like a lot of speakers have talked about earlier, a lot more people are getting into pickleball nowadays. Kids are playing. I'm finding teenagers are playing now rather than tennis. Although when I was younger, I played tennis, but pickleball is a big sport now. It's played from here around the entire world. So it's growing rapidly, and you've heard that earlier. But anyway, what I wanted to also talk about briefly here is about the tennis club. Donation. I know in the past I've heard some stuff, and I've read a couple things. Donations were made, I guess, in the past by the tennis club. But I just wanted to bring up that I still don't think that gives them the exclusive rights to manage or dictate the use of the city public park, which has already been open since it was originally put in for the residents of Gilroy and visitors of the residents. So anyway, I know that there's some plans of a possible alternate location they've talked about. And, if worse comes to worse, if that's what happens down the road, I'm sure some of us we don't mind switching over to that.
Okay,
But
your time.
during the time, just real quick, I'd like to say that we'd like to remain where we can until courts are possibly set up in the future.
Right.
So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Kirk Anderson.
Well, this will be easy because it's all been said already, so I'm
Great.
not going to be redundant and everything on that. We just really want to have shared access to public courts. I think it's a simple solution on that. My wife and I retired about 4 years ago, and we chose Gilroy because of the strong community, and it's great. You can't believe the community that we have. I'm so proud of this community. So, I think I'm just going to close right here by saying find a solution. You guys can do it. I think it's simple. We need a shared solution at Los Alamos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alejandro Del Campo.
Hello, and thanks for the opportunity. I've been a Gilroy resident for many years and a neighbor to Los Animas Park since 2006. I can actually see the courts 5 and 6 from my window. And we have enjoyed the park. All my family plays tennis. We've been playing tennis for a long time. But since COVID, we learned about this new sport called pickleball. Well, not necessarily new, but due to Gilroy. And we've been playing pickleball since. I've been working from home for the past 18 months. My office, home office window, I can actually see the courts. I've seen an increase of pickleball players in the mornings, in the evenings. Weekends, there's families trying to learn how to play pickleball and all that. I was going to say more things, but I think most of the things have been said. I just want to add that I found tennis and pickleball sports that can coexist together. I wake up on weekends, Saturday or Sundays, listening to the sound of a tennis ball or a pickleball ball, and this sound I found to be the sound of life. It has been nice to see Las Animas Park full of life and healthy people again. Please let it continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lee Nakamura.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm actually a Morgan Hill resident, but have been in the area for 30 years and come down to Gilroy to play racquetball on lots of bike rides and developed a lot of good friendships and over the years. And when COVID hit and the racquetball courts were not available, we discovered pickleball. And I just wanted to give a little brief background to, I think, how we managed to get to this place. As I said, when COVID hit, a lot of Gilroy racquetball players joined the morning group that were already playing, and we started an afternoon group. And with the increased traffic, the chalk lines that we had been using became real messy, which became an issue with the tennis club. And we were asked by someone from the tennis club if we could use tape instead of chalk. And what no one could foresee was that the tape would separate, adhesive would be left behind, and that was deemed to be somehow irreparable, even though this could be remedied using cleaning solutions, the proper cleaning solutions. And somehow that became an issue that resulted in the pickleball players being banned from Los Animas Park. Again, this is simply something that could be remedied, but it has become something that resulted in us being locked out. And as has been mentioned, the recent email stated that the courts were actually ruined and required resurfacing because of this. Again, not true. And just wanted to be able to provide a little bit of that background in case that was not on the record somehow.
Your time is up. Are you able to see the clock, people, when you're speaking?
Oh,
no, you can't
it's over
see
there,
it?
but we're looking over here, so.
Oh,
anyway.
okay. All right.
Okay.
Just checking.
Just,
Okay. So
again,
thank you.
we'd like to be able to coexist. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next
All right.
speaker is Sharon Luna.
Good evening, everyone. I have a young man that is truly interested in pickleball now. So I'd like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here. I am a resident of San Martin. I'm also involved with the San Martin Neighborhood Alliance. And I have been seeing on social media members of our Gilroy community, Morgan Hill community, and San Martin express their concern in regard to development in our areas and other items. We also have the possible closure of Reed Hillview Airport with the traffic coming down to San Martin Airport. And if that does, it'll make San Martin Airport the 40th busiest airport in the United States. So there's a lot of issues that we have. So I thought, how can we all address our issues? And that I started doing some investigation, and there is a South County Joint Planning Advisory Committee that all three county and the cities of Morgan Hill and Gilroy could be on this committee. It was a committee many years ago. It's still active, yet they haven't had a meeting since 2017. And we would like to get that committee up and running. I did do a survey to see if there would be participation from the community, and I'm moving forward with trying to get this committee reestablished, not as an advisory committee, but as a commission. So that way we can make or have the authority to work with the councils and the county to do a joint effort to make sure that we are doing right by all of our citizens, and maybe cut down a little bit on the negativity on social media. But it's important, and I
Your
hope
time
you
is
will
up,
support
too.
it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Took me a while to realize you weren't talking about pickleball. Okay. And next speaker.
Alexander Tom.
Hey, howdy. Thank you for your time. I'm a new Gilroy resident as of August of 2020. And ever since moving down to Gilroy, it's been difficult, with the pandemic. And one of the first things that I've been able to access is the sport of pickleball in my neighborhood community. And I learned pickleball at the beginning of the pandemic, but, it's been really hard to find a sense of community down here, and I'm really fortunate and grateful for the community that I have been able to cultivate down here in my new hometown of Gilroy. I moved down from San Francisco, and I don't know if it's been mentioned before, but pickleball, just as a side tangent, is the fastest growing sport in America. And it is a great sport to train hand-eye coordination. It's a great sport that's accessible to all ages. My nephew and niece, who's 8 and 6 years old, love playing pickleball with the grandparents, with me and the family. And it's great to hear that there are families out there in Gilroy that are encouraging the whole family to get out for a good, fun time. And it's kind of disheartening for me to hear that there has been so much tension, especially at the Los Animas Park, about accessibility to the courts, the city courts. And whether it's tennis or pickleball, I think there's a solution where our whole community can benefit from. You know, when my nephew comes down, he's really excited to go to Los Animas Park because there's a skate park there. And how great would it be if there was also dedicated pickleball courts, or at least pickleball courts that people know that they can go to have fun. So thank you for your time, and good luck with everything else.
Thank you. Thank you. I counted 12 there. Do you still have another?
We had a few more come in while
That's
people
what I
started
thought would happen, right. So then it should be 1 minute. That's what I wanted to do in the beginning, but so there's more that's come in.
Our next speaker is Lisa Trumpler.
Okay, so if you could please watch the time, because thank you.
So good evening. My name is Lisa Trumpler, and I'm a resident of Gilroy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I love Gilroy, but I'm here tonight to express my disappointment, and I hope there is a solution because I have been made to feel like a second-class citizen. I'm sure that is not the intent of my community, so I thought I needed to speak up and say something. We all have felt so isolated during the pandemic, but I have been fortunate to find an activity close to home that is safe, fun, and has been a key to maintaining my mental and physical health. Last week, I found the courts that I play at will be resurfaced and was told that the city was eliminating the pickleball courts because of the tennis club's objections. I was surprised the city would make this decision without doing any community outreach. When I heard that, I felt that wasn't right and that I needed to say something. We are part of community too. We pay taxes, we go to church here, and our children go to the local schools. As of now, my schedule is that I drop my kids off at school and then I go head off to Los Angeles to play with my new pickleball family. However, these courts are eliminated. Our pickle community will have to go other cities to play, such as San Juan Bautista and San Jose,
Okay,
and I don't want that.
Overtime.
Okay, so
Sorry.
the decision, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. So for those who put in speaker cards after I announce the time, that's why it's 1 minute each. If you have another.
Our next speaker is Pam Marshall.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. So I'm the Director of Recreation for Eagle Ridge. I'm also a Gilroy resident whose son got to get taught tennis at Los Animas. And now the transition has happened. I just wanted to have some learnings for what happened with us in Eagle Ridge. We have 2 courts only, and we had such interest in adding pickleball to it during the pandemic again, because like we've talked about, we have ages 13 to 75 that play in our courts, and so we had to figure out a way to be able to make it work. So we do have 1 dedicated tennis court, but then we have gone to multi-sport. On the 1 other court that we have, we're literally resurfacing at this moment, and we're squeezing 4 in. And it's critical, I think, just to understand that the socialness part of pickleball is what makes it the big thing that it is, right? And you have to have those people together in the area. Where you only have 2 or 4 people in tennis, you can have up to 16 people rotating around and all of that. So, I'm over again. Darn it. Okay, well, I have pictures of all the research that we did to get to our courts. So
Great. Thank you.
Our
Thank
last
you.
speaker is Bruce Serpa.
And your card came in late, Bruce. Wow.
I have to say, his actually came in early, but he asked to go at the end, so.
Oh, all right, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, hi, everybody. Thank you, Mary Blankley and the council members. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you all the messages that we've had here about pickleball today, this evening. One of the things that we ran into when we started talking about pickleball is that the courts at Los Animas are USTA facility, and we can't do anything to disrupt the USTA facility. So it got me thinking about what can be done about this, and so I started doing some investigation, and I called up the headquarters of the USTA in New York, and I spoke with the Secretary of the Facilities for the United States, who referred me to the gentleman who was responsible for the facilities across the United States, and then I was referred to the regional facilities manager here in Northern California. And there's a few things that I found very interesting in my conversations with them. One is that there is no court minimum that you have to be a USTA sanctioned, registered, recognized club or court. You can do it with one court. So there's no minimum in that regard. So that was one thing that I found was very interesting to me. And so as I started talking to them further about this, it became very evident that they all felt that pickleball was kind of taken over, and their goal was to stop having pickleball take over. So they want to find a common goal with pickleball. And so right now, the only thing that is preventing pickleball and tennis courts from residing is their rules, and they think that that's going to change within the next 24 months. One of the things that also I thought was interesting is the USTA, there's been some leagues that have been playing at Gilroy, and there hasn't been a USTA sanctioned event in the past 5 years, according to the Gilroy Tennis Club courts. Having a club where you play a dual meet against them is not a USTA sanctioned event, and so it doesn't have any bearing on that. So that USTA holding is something that anybody can do. So I know I'm over, but I just want to make one other point here, and then I'll move on. We're not asking for exclusivity to Los Animas. We're not asking for us to have domination over those courts. What we're asking for is to coexist. Just like at Wheeler Gym, where there's volleyball, badminton, pickleball, basketball courts, they're all laid out on the courts, and they have different color courts. And so you can have tennis and you can have pickleball on the same court. It doesn't prevent the USTA from recognizing it. So,
wrap up, please.
Yeah, so my ask is that let's coexist. There's nothing wrong with having multiple lines painted on a court. It doesn't prevent the Gilroy Tennis Club from having their league play. It doesn't prevent them from having anything outside of having recognized national sanctioned events, and they haven't had one in 5 years. So let's coexist.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any others? That's it. Okay. So now we move on to presentations from Santa Clara County Arts Council, SV Creates, Connie Martinez. Okay. And you have a time limit too, but I'm told you've been told, so okay. No. What did you tell her? Okay. Right. All right. Sorry. No. Time limit is 5 to 7.
I'll speed through it.
Okay.
So good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I do have a presentation that I'll follow. And let me start. Connie Martinez, SV Creates, and I'm with my colleagues Alexander Urbanowski and Tanuja Bahal. And I want to start out by explaining why we're here. How does that sound? Okay, next slide, please. Am I controlling these, or is someone controlling them for me? Okay, good. I like to control it. Thank you. Okay, so we're here actually to forge a partnership with the City of Gilroy. And a partnership that will help to strengthen your arts and culture and creative community. But it's important that you know that we want to do this in alignment with your values and your priorities. So tonight is about introducing you to us. I promise in the future we won't be talking about ourselves. And as we start this journey, it's developing relationships in Gilroy, as well as listening to your community. So that's what our first steps are. So just to put it in perspective, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have a small staff, annual budget of about $2.5 million. Our funding is from institutional funders, so we don't get funded by individuals as much as we do government, corporations, foundations. And we're also the designated local partner for the state of California, and are in deep partnership with the county of Santa Clara. In fact, Supervisor Wasserman knows we're here, and they're excited that we're actually taking this step. We are a network of leaders that care about the cultural ecosystems within our communities, but we also value how the arts can transform our communities. And we would hope that the journey that we're about to take together is that we can bring value to Gilroy on that same journey. So this is just an example of we do a lot of gatherings, hosting, and in fact, we're hosting a gathering with your artists and artist community this Saturday at Neon Exchange. And so if you can come by then, that would be great. I want to talk about the three things that we do. The first one is capacity building. And essentially, it's dedicated to building and strengthening the organizations and the artists that produce art and present art. So we are grant makers. We develop conferences and workshops that bring management tools to the leadership of our ecosystem. We also do research studies. In fact, we just published the Business of the Arts in the Business Journal. I don't know if any of you saw this. We're leaving copies for all of you. So that will be a leave behind. And then we're also concerned about space and service solutions, because the arts are businesses and they need services and space to do their work. And we also have a particular interest in building the next generation of cultural leaders. Here's just one of our workshops. We do many. We do dozens during the year. The second category after capacity building is visibility. So we are advocates at the federal, state, and local levels on behalf of the arts ecosystem. We also publish Content Magazine. I don't know if any of you have seen it. We've got copies for all of you, and most recent, I guess it was last year, that we featured your local gallery and the leader. So the story's in here. We'll leave that behind for you as well. We're promoting arts and cultural events, and we also showcase our local artists through two programs, Artists and the Poet Laureate. And so these are some of the things we want to bring to Gilroy. So wouldn't it be wonderful in the future if we had a Gilroy County Poet Laureate that was from Gilroy? We also host parties and creative conversations. So Content Magazine, that's another one of our covers, if you will. The next category, so build the capacity, raise the visibility, is to actually increase accessibility, especially to groups that are disenfranchised and or don't have access. So we have a program that's called Arts Ed Connect. We've actually done some of the Gilroy schools with that, which brings arts education programs into your schools. We do access grants for organizations that can serve high-need communities. And then we lead initiatives that, depending on the community, in the case of, some of you may have been at the Mexican Heritage Plaza, we actually incubated the School of Arts and Culture there and then spun it off as its own nonprofit. We also have a hub in Juvenile Hall and provide teens with access through the studios, and we call it the studio, and also the community schools. And lastly, we do have a program that is transforming a wing of the Valley Medical Center. So the common thread here are that it's serving communities that are high need, okay? So just an example of our studio program. And so kind of to the bottom line, where are we getting started, okay? We are trying to learn more about Gilroy. We don't know your community like you do, and so we're going to be talking to civic and cultural leaders like yourselves over the next several months and years. I told you about the artistic convening on Saturday. It's just the beginning, and we want to engage with your community. So we're rolling up the sleeves. This isn't just a one-time event. It's a journey that we want to go on with you. We're also wanting to identify opportunities that are specifically customized for Gilroy. And that means we're proactively seeking ways to invest and looking how we can integrate Gilroy into our networks. So we have this whole host of programs, and historically, Gilroy has been underserved in our county, okay? So we're here because you've been underserved, and we're making an intentional effort to expand that service to Gilroy. We have, just to give you an example of an opportunity, we have a funder that has approached us who wants to help with a mural in Gilroy. It is Blue Shield, and they are dedicating $15,000 to this effort, and we're going to do an RFP within your community with your community leaders to have a youth-led installation of a mural in downtown Gilroy. So this is just an example of what we hope to bring to your community. With all that said, we'd like to work closely with your Arts and Culture Commission and develop sort of a memo of understanding of how we can work together, and that documents our areas of interest and opportunities, and then that becomes just a documentation that we essentially commit to on our end. So we're asking you to accept our offers of working with you, and hope that you will support us working with your Arts and Culture Commission. So I think I'll end there, and I don't know if you, how did I do on time?
You do with 8 minutes, so it's not bad.
Okay,
Not
I'll
bad.
take it.
I
It was a 15-minute presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're supposed to be told ahead
That's
of time,
okay.
so I'll have to work on where that,
Okay,
where that
okay.
breakdown is.
I'm sorry, too.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Were there any questions?
That's what I'm here to ask. Yep. Does anybody have questions? I know I am meeting with you next week or the week after, so we can continue the conversation. Anybody have questions? Yes, Rebecca?
Can you give us examples of the kind of work you do in neighboring communities?
Oh, yes. So we work with, I'll give you an example of Milpitas. We're working with their Arts Commission, looking for opportunities to add organizations to our grant portfolio. We work closely, as you would expect, with the City of San Jose and not only their Arts Commission, but the Office of Cultural Affairs. I did forget to mention that in Gilroy, we have funded the Poppy Jasper Festival for years. I did mention we work with schools, and I think that the message that I want to give you is that we will customize our work with the community depending on what you need. So, for example, we are developing this arts web, which connects service providers to arts organizations, and with cities, depending on where they are, we would bring expertise to their city based on this network, this web of service providers. And so it could be as simple as a mentor for a newly started arts commission. How do you do it? What do you do? Various things like that. But and we customize it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Hilton?
Thank you. I'm looking forward to Saturday as well, and thank you for being here tonight. Does SV Creates have representatives on its board or committees that are from the South County or Gilroy area?
We do not currently.
Okay.
We do not. Honest answer.
So how would you go about recruiting, whether it's nominees for the poet or other artistic awards, or our community members to become more involved with you?
Yeah, so what we're hoping in this partnership is that we have point of contact within Gilroy, so when we have opportunities, like we have an upcoming event that focuses on new artists, emerging artists, and we would look to you to help us connect nominations for that, nominations for the Poet Laureate, and board related. It's certainly something we can think about as we go forward, but we have to get to know each other first.
Thank you.
Yeah, right up the commission, the Arts and Culture Commission is where most of that happens here. Okay? All right, thank you very much. Thank you. All right. 7:30, we haven't even started the agenda. Council member reports. Oh my God. Councilmember Bracco.
Yes, I'll try to make this quick. Our water district subcommittee met, and all that was on our agenda was to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting. So we made it where in the future, if there's nothing to be discussed, we're not going to meet. And then on the library district, the Joint Powers Authority, we received $175,000 in donations in the last quarter. We're hiring a full-time employee to go in between Gilroy and Milpitas. They'll be splitting their time. We approved the 10-year maintenance plan. We had a surplus of $10 million. Where the libraries are going to be extending the hours in all the libraries in Santa Clara County, and they're going to be organizing outside events, which probably won't happen until springtime, I would imagine. We had 25,000 ballots dropped off at our libraries throughout the county.
Wow.
And we have 41 of our employees are working in the county's vaccination service. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Armendariz.
Sure. The Downtown Business Association had a meeting. They also had a couple of events since last time. This weekend was the Vines and Hops event. It was very successful. They have an upcoming Dia de los Muertos event, and holiday parade and festivities are on the calendar too, as well as an upcoming mixer in January at the new Tempo restaurant. That's all I got.
Okay, Councilmember Marks.
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Armendariz, for reporting on the GDBA. So I'll just talk about Gilroy Gardens. They have a really spectacular Halloween festivities out there. So if you have a chance, please go out there and visit and see all the lights and what they've done with the facilities. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, yes. And would like to reiterate, you're supposed to report, the alternate is not supposed to report unless the main representative could not attend.
She could not attend.
Oh, well then, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Both of you then. Thank you. Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. From the Visit Gilroy California Welcome Center, August lodging reports from Smith Travel reveal Gilroy occupancy is 5% higher than 2020, however, continues to be lower than 2019. Currently, Gilroy lodging properties are benefiting from the overflow of visitation from the Monterey Bay area and also offering the less expensive hotel rate than Monterey lodging properties. Executive Director Howard reported on her attendance at the first in-person travel and tourism conference since February 2020. Cal Travel Summit was held in Huntington Beach, and there was over 300 individuals from the hospitality industry that attended. The California Welcome Center in Gilroy will be changing its hours from 10 to 5 p.m., and that started on October 1st. In addition, Visit California is hosting the first in-person meeting for all California Welcome Center managers in Fairfield at the Jelly Belly Factory in late October. California Welcome Center Gilroy manager Pam Jimenez will be attending this two-day meeting. From the South County United for Health, we talked about the successes of the past year and discussed what we'll be working on in 2022. These feature tobacco prevention, active transportation, diabetes prevention, climate change, and more to come. From Silicon Valley Clean Energy, since launching in 2017, Silicon Valley Clean Energy has exceeded the state's requirements for renewable energy procurement. SVCE has been providing clean electricity from 50% renewable and 50% carbon-free sources. Senate Bill 100 sets a goal for all electricity to be powered from clean, carbon-free sources by 2045, and that at least 60% is generated from renewable sources. It also accelerates purchasing of renewables to about 50% renewable by 2025 and 60% by 2030. SVC is on track to meet these additional renewable requirements with $1.6 billion invested in 13 long-term power purchase agreements for solar plus storage, wind, and geothermal projects. 3 renewable projects have already started on construction, and the new power supply on the SVC website has more information and photos about the project. Lastly, thanks to all those that have contributed to our public bike fund and bike rack decal program. It goes towards purchasing replacement parts to items like our public bike fix-it stations located throughout the city of Gilroy. If you'd like to purchase a bike decal on one of our decorative bike racks, there are some available in downtown and at Gateway Park on Santa Teresa.
That's not a city commission that you're on. Okay. That would be by comped commission to say those things. Councilmember Tovar?
Thank you, Mayor. No report. I just want to make a quick comment, and that Councilmember Armendariz mentioned earlier. I want to also thank the GDBA for all the events that they've had lately. Spoke with a couple of business owners and restaurant owners and said it's been the busiest weekend for them since pre-COVID. So I want to thank the community for going out there and supporting our local businesses and all the organizations that have worked hard to get these events going. So thank you.
Councilmember Roman Yost.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of announcements here. The Gilroy Economic Development Council met a couple of weeks ago. We approved money to update the website. Additionally, that's the time that Dr. Kathleen Rose shared that she would be stepping down from her role leading Gavilan College. I had a chance to attend the VTA ribbon cutting for the Rapid Transit Line 568 last week with the mayor over at our transit center, and our mayor was the headliner among many mayors and other council members from around the region. So that was a great thing to kick off the vision that we have for our transit center. And then finally, National Night Out was 2 weeks ago on Tuesday. The police chief was there, the fire chief was there. It was a great opportunity for the community to come together and just interact in a very positive setting with law enforcement, with emergency services personnel. And it was also great that the representatives of the Gilroy Youth Task Force, myself, Councilmember Bracco, and the mayor as well were all part of that, as well as Chief Espinosa. We were able to present a check for $2,500 to the organizers of that event to support that community event for everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember. All great things. All right, I have no report, but I would like to wish a very happy October birthday to our October council members, Councilmember Tovar and Councilmember Marks, who have October birthdays.
Happy birthday.
Okay. All right, future council initiated items.
I have one too.
Okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't know if this is something that we could consider for future agenda items, but given the speakers that were here tonight and the concerns that were made, and especially the comments that were made, I was hoping that we could possibly bring this pickleball issue to the council for discussion.
Okay. I personally think we should let staff try to work that out first, but if the council thinks it needs to be on the council agenda, then that would be, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I mean,
Jimmy, or?
If I could just second that, because that's exactly what I wanted to parlay into also. And, you know, a simple informational report coming back from staff, you know, reporting on the current status of the tennis courts, what's true, what's not true. And if there is a way to incorporate pickleball, including if there's terms on this MOU that people keep referring to with the tennis club, and I am to also open any amendments to that as well.
What I'm suggesting is it may not need to come before council at all if staff wants to look at it, if staff can work with it. If staff would rather it come before council or feels like it should, or if the council feels like it should, then that's what.
Yeah, I think my request would be to have council have discussion on it.
Okay.
I second that.
And there are
Support that.
2 for that, 3 for
Yep.
that. Okay, is there a 4th for that? Peter is a 4th? Okay, so then there are 4 to support that, so. Got
Thank
it?
you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I just want to be very clear about what we're being asked to bring back. As Mr. Tovar said, there were a lot of things that were said, and some, in my opinion and my research, are accurate and some are not. And I think it would be fair to all groups involved to ensure that we have the same starting point from having this kind of discussion. If that suits Councilmember Tovar, I'd be happy to bring that back to the council.
Yeah, that works for me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And timing will be as that can fit. There's no sense of urgency there. Okay.
Excuse me. As part of that, can we get information on the El Roble courts, where they stand?
Yes, Mr. Bracco, we've actually evaluated numerous sites within the city that council's just not aware of, that we've been working with the pickleballers to identify a long-term solution, and we can certainly make sure that we give you the information on El Roble.
Yeah, that's why I was suggesting that staff could maybe work it out, because there has been a lot going on that we don't know about, but, okay.
Also, wait, Mayor, may I ask a question? Jimmy, since tonight pickleball was heard from, and yes, there were some inaccuracies, is it appropriate to have the members of the tennis board come and speak before council?
Ms. Marks, we didn't solicit the pickleballers, and during public session, anybody that wants to talk on anything on the agenda is free to do so.
Okay.
So I don't have an opinion on that.
All right. Okay. No, it's coming back, Fred. Yeah, there were enough council members wanting it, so it's coming back. And when it comes back, then it can be open to anybody who wants to speak on it at all. Okay, so we're on the consent calendar now, and...
I had an agenda item to request.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. I hit the speak button. So I'd like to ask that...
I don't think this thing is working, just so you know.
Okay. That until we have an equity and inclusion policy implemented, if we could discuss delaying the installation of the El Camino Real mission bell into the Paseo.
Okay. Okay, so that's a subject that, okay, so you're asking that, so the prior city council approved the installation of that bell, and so did the Arts and Culture Commission.
Correct.
I donated the bell.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so it went through public processes twice. It went through the Arts and Culture Commission, was agendized and noticed, and then it went through the city council. It's not installed yet because they were waiting on Public Works to finish things up to install it.
Okay.
So in order to address what you're saying, I think what you would need to be asking to be on the future agenda is for this city council to have a different decision than the last city council.
So that's why I'm asking that we delay, because I understand what you just said, and I understand that those processes have already been completed. So I'd like to ask that we do discuss delaying the installation of that until we have a policy, and that the bell and its donation is assessed by our policy.
I understand. It's just that's contrary to what the prior council voted. That's why I'm saying.
I understand that.
That for that to, then your agenda request needs to be that this council agendize undoing what the prior council approved. Not approve that and to basically start it over.
Start the process
right.
over. Okay.
So that's what Councilmember Armendariz is suggesting. So I do not support that, but that doesn't mean that there aren't enough people here who do. Okay, so I see 3 support. Okay, and so 4 are not. So
wow. Okay.
No. Okay. So that answers that. So that then answers other things too. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on the consent calendar, and that I should ask for. Does anybody have anything on the consent calendar that they wish to remove? Okay, then I'd like to ask for public comment. Is there any public comment on anything on consent?
I don't have any speaker cards.
Okay, so then with that, I would...
Move approval.
Okay, a motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Tovar. And I don't know if I don't think our screens are working, so let's just do a roll call. No, Councilmember Leroy Munoz moved approval, and seconded by Councilmember Tovar. Yes, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, all right, unanimous. Okay, now we actually start the agenda. God, 7:45. Should we take that break yet, Carol? Okay, we'll go for, all right, so this is item 8A, 2023 to 2031 Housing Element Award. Okay, award of contract. And Cindy McCormick is going to be the staff report. Yeah, do the staff report.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Tonight, staff is recommending that the City Council award a contract to Michael Baker International in the amount of $306,155 for preparation of the 2023 to 2031 housing element, and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract and associated documents. I'd be happy to go through why we are recommending Michael Baker. Otherwise, I'd like to conclude my presentation and answer any questions that you have.
Wow. That's efficient.
She earns a prize, right?
I know, God. Okay, well, let's start with questions. I know we have them.
We're not going off this.
I can't see anything off this.
Does it work? Yeah.
Oh,
we go.
there, great. Okay, you're up, Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you, Cindy. I have two questions, and this might come up next week, and if it's going to, then that's totally fine. But I have some concerns with Spanish translation as we move into, if we still try to host this tonight, we're not broadcasting, in Spanish like we would be when we could do it on Zoom. So that's a concern I have because I know that was addressed inside the contract, and I appreciate that. So if you could just maybe someone could speak to that, like what other channels, normal channels they would use, whether that's going into religious venues, schools, and community-based organizations as an example. That's my first question.
Okay, so we can have Spanish translation services during the meeting, so we can have a Spanish translator provide that information. We can, the consultant has offered to either rent or borrow headphones that would translate during the meeting. And then we will have community outreach meetings that meet the needs of our residents. The Michael Baker International prepared the 2020 consolidated plan, and so they have some really good understanding of the needs of the city and how our stakeholders are responding to community outreach.
And then so maybe like if our technology doesn't work in here yet, at least they can maybe do one of their meetings, using the technology that you all already have to do the translation in Spanish, the SAP. My next question was inside their proposal, it talked about utilizing services from Veronica Tam and Associates.
Correct.
So are we going to be interacting and is staff interacting with Michael Baker and Associates, or are we going to be are they subbing this out and we're going to be interacting with Veronica?
So Michael Baker International will be leading the update of the housing element. Veronica Tam will be advising Michael Baker throughout the process. I will let you know that I did my homework on Veronica Tam, and she has an excellent reputation.
Thank you.
All right. Any other council members with a question? No? Then I'm just going to make a comment, Cindy, because I'm going to be one voting in favor of this. But I hope that staff, when you're discussing things with entities like this, like Michael Baker International, especially with housing, it's so important to me anyway, that housing, employment, and transportation all be looked at simultaneously. Because adding housing without considering how people are getting to work, without considering where they're getting to work, is critical to everything being successful. And so much of what I read, including in their own report, not staff's report, theirs, Michael Baker's report, where they just keep referring to as a barrier of preventing affordable housing from being built in high resource areas, if that's a barrier. Well, Gilroy is not a high resource area, right? We don't have high employment areas, we're not high quality transit areas, we're none of those things. So I just want to make sure that is always in the back of staff's mind, as you're looking at housing in Gilroy, that we set it up for success, right? We want people to be able to get to work, and we just aren't in the same position as the cities to the north of us.
Absolutely,
Okay.
I understand, and I will be conveying that to Michael Baker.
Great, thank you. Okay, so what do we need to do for this one? We need a motion to award a contract to Michael Baker and Associates in the amount of $306,155 for preparation of the 2023-2031 housing element, and authorize city administrator to execute the contract and associated documents. And that motion was made by Councilmember Hilton and seconded by Councilmember Tovar.
Mayor?
Yes.
Did we open public comment on this item?
Oh, God, sorry. Public comment. We don't have any. Okay, I know. That's why it's so easy to forget, but thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Gosh. Okay, so continuing on with the vote.
I can't, there's something wrong here. I can't vote using my screen.
Okay. Then do you want to do a roll call? Okay.
Council members Armendariz?
Yes.
Rocco?
Yes.
Hilton?
Aye.
LaRomanos?
Yes.
Marks? Yes. Tovar?
Yes.
Mayor Blankley?
Yes. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Cindy. Okay. Item 9A, adopt the 2020 Urban Water Management and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. I was sure hoping we'd have more people here to talk on this, but Daryl, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. We're here tonight for the second reading of the Urban Water Management Plan and 2020 Water Shortage Contingency Plan. As you may recall, the last meeting we had our first reading. We do have our expert here if we have any specific questions tonight. A little background is the City of Gilroy, as a water supplier, must submit an urban water management plan to the Department of Water Resources in accordance with California Water Code requirements. The purpose of the urban water management plan is to review and maintain the reliability of urban water supplies, ensure that future beneficial use can be complemented by sufficient water supply, continue to promote policies and programs that benefit water conservation, and provide a means for responsible response during water supply shortages and drought conditions. In addition to being filed every 5 years, the UWMP must satisfy requirements defined in the Urban Water Management Planning Act of 1983 and any amendments thereof. Tonight, the analysis is that the City Council held a public hearing on the draft of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and 2020 Water Shortage Contingency Plan on October 4th. Since that time, the city has provided opportunities for the community to comment on the plan. However, no additional comments have been received. Therefore, no changes to the plans have been made since presented to council on our last meeting on October 4th. It is now recommended the City Council adopt the plans, and I do have the expert here if you have any specific questions.
Thank you. All right. So we did try to solicit comments, right? We did that. Okay. All right. Council, I'll start with you. Anybody have questions before I go to public comment? Nope. Nobody here. All right. I will open the public hearing. Do we have any members of the public wishing to comment?
No, ma'am.
None at all. Okay. Back to council. Really? Nothing?
I'll make a motion to...
Okay. No, you can make the motion. I'll comment after your motion is seconded. I was just going to comment just because this is a big deal, and it's too bad that more members of the public aren't here to say something about it, because it gets passed, and then it's what's in effect, and then people complain afterwards, not even taking part in what it is. We discussed this at our last meeting, and effectively, when you really look through what all these different levels mean, we get to level 6, and that's the only one that is serious enough where we actually have Jimmy, the city administrator, actually has some level of control over what to do about developments that come in when you're at that level. So it's just, it's interesting that how this comes about and that we don't have more public input. I'm just very sorry to see that. So with that, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the 2020 Water Storage Contingency Plan.
Thank you. Is there a second? A second by Councilmember. Okay, so that was made by Councilmember Bracco and seconded by Councilmember Armendariz.
You want a roll call vote?
Yeah, please, because it's not on here.
Council members Armendariz?
Yes.
Yes.
Bracco, Hilton, Leroy Munoz?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Tovar? Did you?
Aye.
Mayor Blankley?
Yes. Okay, that passed unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Do you want a break or can we go on? Okay, so we are now on agenda item 10A. This is Youth Commission. What happened here, for those who may not be aware, is at the last meeting, we appointed 4 youth commissioners. And what we didn't know is that we should have been appointing 5. Okay, because at the time, there was another commissioner whose term was, who's graduating, and therefore could no longer be. So since there's no new information, it's just that we should have appointed 5 instead of 4, I would like to suggest that we go back to the voting record that we did, which I have here, and I can remind the council that where that left off is the top 4 got in, and then the 5th would have been a runoff between Diego and Aiden. There was 1 vote for Novelli, but there were 2 votes for Diego and 2 votes for Aiden. And so that would have been the runoff for the 5th seat. So I would like to suggest that we simply go down the line and just vote for one of those two, and that will be the one then that, okay? Is that all right with everyone? Okay, so then we'll do that, and so with that, Dion, I'll start with you. Okay, so that's one for Diego.
Aiden.
And one for Aiden. Okay, Carol?
Aiden.
Okay, Councilmember Hilton?
Aiden.
Councilmember Tovar?
Aiden.
And Councilmember Leroy Munoz?
Aiden.
Okay, and I was Diego last time, so I'll get Diego again, but that leaves Aiden winning 5-2. So Aiden will be our next youth commissioner. All right, congratulations, Aiden. Okay, with that, we're going to take a little 5-minute break, okay? And then we will pick this up in 5 minutes, so roughly 8 o'clock. All right, Gilroy mixed-use residential and multifamily residential objective design standards policy. We're back, everybody. Okay, and Cindy is going to give us this report. Thank you.
I am pleased to introduce tonight's agenda item on objective design standards for the city of Gilroy. Pursuant to state law, the city cannot deny a housing development project based on subjective reasoning. Therefore, the city has drafted objective design standards that would apply to all mixed-use residential and multifamily residential developments in Gilroy. On May 3rd, an interim set of objective design standards was approved by the City Council with an expectation that a more comprehensive set of standards would return to the Council for final approval following review by the Planning Commission. These standards are critical to help ensure that mixed-use and multifamily residential projects in Gilroy conform to the city's minimum design expectations. There are several benefits to the adoption of objective design standards, including promoting good design principles that have the intent to create attractive and safe neighborhoods with human-scaled buildings that create a sense of place and are compatible with the surrounding area. Other notable benefits include providing clear and concise standards in a consistent manner that will help minimize delays in the review and approval process for both the applicant and city staff. I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Brent Gibbons from Mintier Harnish this evening to briefly walk you through the standards, public comments received. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Good to be with you this evening, and we'll make this brief. You guys have had a long night, and there's still some more time to go. So I just wanted to go over the draft objective design and development standards as part of this process, provide a little overview of community input, discuss the Planning Commission recommendation, and then open up to public comment and possible action. So shown on the screen here, this is a list of the different categories that are part of the objective standards that we collaborated with your city staff on and brought forward to you in May. Based on that meeting, we have expanded upon these to include several new items that were brought up by Planning Commission as well as public comment. Everything from massing and articulation, circulation, that gets back to your comment, Mayor, about housing and the connection to transportation and circulation, lighting, fencing, security measures for SEPTED, and a whole host of other issues. So as part of this process, we've received 28 comments. One came in as part of the council meeting tonight, so that made number 28. We also had a series of stakeholder interviews, 2 sets, and those comments were incorporated into the latest draft that's before you tonight that the Planning Commission has recommended for approval. I don't need to walk through all of these. You have a copy of this as well, but this includes many of the public comment topics that were brought forward. We worked with your staff diligently through each of these to ensure that they did not conflict with state law, and if they could be incorporated easily, that we do so. There are a series of changes I just want to highlight that came after the Planning Commission recommendation. These came out of the latest public comment letter from a local architect who had some concepts and ideas he wanted for council consideration. We have gone through these with city staff and are recommending tonight that these changes be incorporated as part of this final approval. So these are the changes here, some minor ones, including that residential units face parking areas, not just courtyards, that's eyes on the street for safety issues. This recommendation has to do with the trim and recessed of windows and doors. The revised standard you have before you, this was confirmed by the architect on our team and the architect who submitted comments for the council meeting. And this is important because this allows more flexibility in the design of structures, realizing that not everything is modern and contemporary. There are different design influences within Gilroy, and we want to make sure that design is adaptable over the next 20 to 30 years. This comment has to do with the use of manufactured and artificial materials. We originally wanted buildings and structures that had the best quality materials possible. But you have to understand the higher quality materials, the more expensive the project, the less affordable. So that sometimes defeats the purpose of what we're doing here with the city. So the recommendation was to strike the manufactured artificial materials. It is important to point out that a lot of those artificial materials also meet your current building and fire code. So they are important and they can still work on projects. This is a graphic that shows the step back, which is the second and third floors that are step back just for taller buildings adjacent to single story. The commenter just had a question of the 8-foot and where that came from. That was in consultation with our architect and city staff that meets best practices. It is up to the council if the council would like to reduce the 8-foot step backs this evening. And then lastly, there was a change in terminology from floor plate to wall plane just for consistency purposes. Oh, I have one more, I apologize. And then the last comment that was brought up had to do with our passive recreation space that we require of every project seeking ministerial review. And as part of this, the first line item you see here is for the number of units in the development, 2 to 10. The commenter brought up the fact that some of these smaller projects don't necessarily have the land space to have active recreation or passive recreation amenities, and recommended striking that. Staff and our team are recommending that we do strike that provision. I will state that it is not uncommon for smaller developments not to include recreation, especially if they're located within or adjacent to park facilities.
I just had a quick question, if I might. I'm sorry, I don't understand. What's a passive recreation amenity?
Passive recreation amenity, so there's 2 different types. There's a passive and an active. An active could be anything from a playground to a tot lot. Tonight, pickleball was definitely a topic. Passive could be seating areas, fountains, walking paths, courtyards, of the like. Mainly these smaller projects are typically infill, so the sites are already built out. So to require something that won't fit, counterproductive typically.
Understood. Thank you.
But I do want to point out the reason why this was in the draft is because this was part of the stakeholder and community feedback we received in the beginning, so that's why it was included. And then these are just some new illustrations that are part of this. It's great to have standards, but if you can't visualize it or understand it, you need some graphics to back it up. So there are a whole host of new architectural illustrations as part of this draft. The graphics here on the screen depict some of the newer modified standards that we're hoping to evoke through future multifamily and mixed-use design within the city of Gilroy. So I wanted to end this with the Planning Commission recommendation, which is Planning Commission accepted staff's recommended edits in response to public comments and has directed those edits as a clean copy in the draft mixed-use residential and multifamily residential objective design standards policy being forwarded to you, the City Council, tonight. The Planning Commission recommended that the City Council adopt a resolution adopting the Gilroy mixed-use residential and multifamily residential objective design standards policy for all mixed-use residential and multifamily residential development projects in Gilroy as amended by the Planning Commission. That concludes my presentation. I do have additional materials and examples if the council so wishes to hear.
So may I ask you to clarify something then? I understand what the Planning Commission's recommendations were. I certainly understand all the edits from the comments that were received during the time that you had to put them in our packets.
Correct.
But with respect to the one that came in today and those edits that you've changed, how are we seeing, other than on your slides, that's the only place we're seeing those, right?
Correct. That's the only place you're seeing them since they did come in today.
Right.
There is the ability to bring this back if the council would like to see it in its final form.
No, it's okay. I just want to make clear that the edits you just showed us on the slide that came as a result of the comment letter from the architect today are part of what you're asking us to approve tonight.
Yes.
Right. Because it's been through your processes and yeah. Okay. All right, so, council members, any questions? Okay, Councilmember Marks.
I just have one question. When I was reading through the report, it talked about not wanting to put in a color palette because there was no history in Gilroy to have one. And my question is, why can't we start, a change in policy and adopt a color palette? Because we look at our downtown with a wide variety of colors there that don't seem to blend together.
Right, and it's a good question. I probably get asked that a lot. I'm working on about a dozen of these right now. When we get into specific color palettes, for it to be objective, you have to have the specific color and variation. Every structure has to have that. In order to move forward, a color palette would have to be approved not only by Planning Commission and Council, through a staff's recommendation. Most of the times we stray away from color palettes because it starts to cut the uniqueness out of structures. The best example would be the city of Santa Barbara as a very strict architectural style, and that's why they have a color palette. We've heard through the stakeholder and developer meetings that we held that in order to provide unique architectural character and different qualities of structures, that they recommended not using a color palette because it inhibits design in the end. But it is up to the council to determine if that is something that you would like to include or explore further as part of the process.
I would like to know if the council would like to explore it, because, we had some newly painted buildings downtown, one in particular that went to a pretty loud red and yellow scheme that had nothing to do with the architecture. And I don't know, I'm concerned about some of these other buildings that might
Right.
follow some very garish colors.
We can have color palettes associated with different styles.
Right, yeah.
Just because it's
So as of right now, the standards are written not to tie to a specific style. Because as you look around Gilroy, I was born and raised here, the styles changed wherever you are within the city. So the idea is to try to keep these as flexible and open-ended as possible, because styles do change over time. When it comes down to the color, I just want to make a clarification that when you provide a color, it has to be a specific color. For example, in the standards, let's say the community didn't want to see purple buildings, but you just can't state purple buildings because it's subjective. What is purple? Is it lavender? Is it deep purple? Is it royal purple? You have to get down to specific color types, and that's where it gets really tricky because the list can be ongoing. I did want to point out too that on page 8 of the standards, we do have a section on colors, and what it does is it leaves the option open for a variety of colors, but it restricts the amount of body and structure colors you can have for a specific project. So a project doesn't, lack of a better word, has like a circus effect. It starts to streamline that, but it doesn't actually restrict the color itself.
Okay. Councilmember Hilton.
So clarifying question on that, this would not apply to somebody that's just doing general construction. This is specifically for new construction or redevelopment, correct?
This would apply to projects that meet the state's definition and income thresholds for SB 35, SB 330. So there are specific requirements that a project would have to qualify for.
So would there be any code enforcement for this building that wants to change its colors? This doesn't have any teeth to that building of what they can change the color of their building, right?
I'm not sure if you're referring to an existing project.
We were just talking about that. We were talking about a project in downtown who changed the colors of their building. This does not play a part. There's no teeth in code enforcement that can say, hey, our objective design standards say you can't have this color in there anyways.
Correct.
Yeah, this is new construction. This is redevelopment.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So, thank you to staff and the community that got involved and the consultants. You know, one of the beauties of this, and we just saw it right in front of us, is that we own this now, and we can change it during the public process at any time. You got a public comment, it made sense, we changed it, you know, whether you need to change it because state law changes or council changes or best practices, that's the best thing about this, and I'm glad to see it here in front of us. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no others, I'm just going to make one more comment, and then I'm going to go to public comment, and that is how I like how the staff report included all the public comments in there in a matrix so that it was very clear to see who suggested what and what your response was to that. And it really very, very, very well done. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to go to public comment if we have anybody. No speakers. Okay. Closing the public comment hearing. Closing public comment period, and turning back to council and seeing if anybody has more to say or would like to make a motion. Oh, no, I don't think so.
We would be adopting these by resolution.
Yeah, this
which
is
requires
not
a roll
receiving
call vote.
report.
Yeah.
This is, yeah, adopting resolution of the City Council, City of Gilroy, adopting the Gilroy mixed-use residential, what? Okay.
We need a roll call vote anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It'll be a roll call vote, but it is a resolution and multifamily residential objective design standards policy for all mixed-use residential and multifamily residential development projects in Gilroy as amended by the Planning Commission and as amended, I'm going to add this, and as amended by staff for today. And as amended by staff today. Okay, and that will be, so we have a motion by Councilmember Hilton, seconded by Councilmember LaRomanos, and now it's a roll call vote.
Council members Armendariz?
Yes.
Bracco? Yes. Hilton?
Aye.
LaRomanos?
Yes.
Marks? Yes. Tovar? Mayor Blankley?
Yes, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 11, final report of the Unhoused Ad Hoc Committee, and I think Bryce is going to start with that.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. As mentioned, tonight's presentation is the final report for the Unhoused Ad Hoc Committee. Again, just a little bit of background. On the committee, it was formed September 21st, 2020. It had 3 council members that was comprised of Councilmembers Tovar, Bracco, and Marks, who served as the committee chair. When it was adopted, there was 2 intents of the committee. One, to meet with stakeholders to understand the issues that were facing the unhoused, and then use the knowledge gained to formulate a plan of action. So briefly on the accomplishments, the committee has met both of those goals. It had a meeting with stakeholders, interviewed 17 different stakeholders. This included 5 unhoused residents, 2 community residents, 7 service provider organizations, 2 business owners, and as well as a housing manager from the city of Morgan Hill. From the information, the committee formulated the plan of action, which is the second goal, which is developed 12 recommendations that were brought to council, and then in total 14 were adopted when the council added 2 additional. It further established the top 5 priorities as was reported to council in previous presentations. So the committee work has been completed, and the work is at this point transitioning to city staff. This is for 3 reasons. Primary is that it is an ad hoc committee, which means it has limited jurisdiction. The tasks of the committee have been met, as were outlined in the staff reports of adoption. And the work is now largely operational, with policy oversight now happening at the council level. So staff is going forward to coordinate a local task force of the unhoused service providers, which also meets recommendation number 8, to continue to carry out those recommendations and carry the work forward. So again, just kind of briefly giving an update on the recommendations as they stand. For the safe parking program, we're currently in the planning phase with the Compassion Center. We've had a meeting with them post-rejection of the proposal that they had, and continue to work on locating site. We are proactively supporting affordable housing. This is an ongoing business practice, and any such work that we present and complete or start will be identified as such that meets this recommendation. We're also approved a contract for the mobile garbage removal program. has been signed by the contractor, and we are developing our first work orders. For the purchasing of a garbage compactor truck, as was presented at the last council meeting, the bids have been issued, total of 33, to 33 different vendors. We're waiting to receive bids. And then the fifth item is sure all property owners are accountable for maintaining properties. This is an ongoing code enforcement activity that will continue on an ongoing basis, and we're also evaluating sending out messaging regarding their property owners' responsibilities for maintaining their properties in a clean condition. On the recommendation number 6, which is partnering with the City of Morgan Hill. Again, this is an ongoing practice, and we'll be looking to schedule regular coordination meetings with their staff. On the 7th item, I was continuing to support the unhoused service providers through CDBG funding. Again, this is an annual funding cycle. The next one will be coming back to council in less than a year. Number 8 is coordinating monthly check-in meetings with the lead unhoused service providers. Again, this is being met with the coordination of that local task force. Number 9 is organizing community cleanup days. Again, with this, with the contract garbage service, the franchise hauler agreement with our college negotiations, and coordinating with local service providers, we're working to develop a potential program for those cleanup days. Item number 10 is endorsing the community plan to end homelessness. This has been completed. The council approved that resolution back in August. Number 11 is researching agency to provide drug rehabilitation, job training, and placement. We'll be reaching out to the new task force to see if there's a local provider that offers this, either one provider or maybe a couple providers. And if not, then how to attract a non-local provider to offer that service here in this community. Number 12 is to hire a quality of life officer. On that one, after the year-end financial update is provided in November, the proposed program will then be presented to council. Recommendation 13 was to explore differences between a police officer and community services officer. This has also been completed. And finally, recommendation number 14 is to partner with the County Office of Supportive Housing. They are currently developing their cost amounts, and once we receive that from them, it'll be brought back to council with potential recommendations. Going forward, staff is planning to conduct regular quarterly updates to council on unhoused activities, the first being in January for the period from October through December. And then other updates as well for information will come intermittently, whether it's policy direction, looking for any approvals from council, and then also just to provide updates as desired by council for any subject matter that you wish us to come back and update. So in conclusion, the committee has completed their tasks. Over 14 meetings, they've interviewed 17 stakeholders, developed a plan of action, and then initially assisted staff in guiding implementation. At this point, the time for committee is to hand off the plan to staff to implement and council to direct the policy for addressing conditions of unhoused on an ongoing basis. And that completes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions or comments.
Thank you, Bryce. And thank you to the committee. We're going to get to I'm sure everyone on the committee would like to have their parting comments, and this also is a public hearing. We'll have to open for public comment as well. But I want to say thank you for writing this report that very nicely spells out how much work went into this. I mean, it's the end result isn't isn't the measure of success as much as the journey to get there, and all the stuff that all of you on that ad hoc committee did, and with staff too, to try to really do a deep dive into what's out there and what can be done about it, and to have that come back into the 14 or number of things, and where it's going to go from there is what remains to be seen. But I personally want to thank you all for doing all this work and all these meetings and all this interviewing with, I personally can't think of anybody you left out. I mean, that you didn't talk to. Dion.
Point out that the meetings and stuff that were listed up there, that's only the meetings we had down here. Us members met with places like city teams and some ministers and stuff on our own. And we met with quite a lot of people that aren't on there.
Exactly. So, really, I thank you. Okay, would each of you want to, do you have something to say?
I think I'll start, and then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Branco and Tovar. When I got on this committee, I think I had, ideas of grandeur that when it came to the end of the year, we could look at everyone and say that we had saved, X amount of people. We moved some people on and got some into rehab. you know, in my mind, I'm a little disappointed that that did not happen. I realize that Gilroy does not have any amount of money that could ever address the drug, alcohol, and mental illness issue. It's up to the citizens of California to put pressure on Sacramento to start building these facilities and help the people. A 48-hour, 10-day hold does not do the trick. They need to be in supportive housing. I'm not talking about ag news again. I'm talking about real, true supportive housing with doctors and nurses and counselors and job training, job placement. Let's do a good job, because our whole goal is to return these people to society and let them have housing and let them work and get back to their life that they once had. I learned that, you know, there are different types of homelessness. There's those that fell on hard times because of medical illness, or maybe they lost their job and couldn't afford their home anymore. I think many times that particular group gets lost into the definition of unhoused, because in talking to the citizens, we really heard a lot of the negativity surrounding unhoused, you know, the filth, the garbage, the needles, the drug use, and it's such a broad category. When everyone's clumped together, it seemed like most of our energy was always spent on the criminal element of the unhoused, the drug use, the alcohol, that, you know, we really didn't talk about the families out there that needed the help and the support. Not that we didn't want to, it was just that the citizens, you know, were putting the pressure on us about what we were doing and why was it taking so long and what's going to happen next. And many times the actual unhoused advocates, you know, stopped the flow of things and got in our way. I remember talking to one in particular when I said, it would really help all of us out if you could just, when you take dinners to these people, to tell them to please clean up their encampments, because we're trying to sell an idea to the citizens to help everyone. And when they're not doing their part, it's pretty hard to get a community behind you to listen. And it worked for a week, and then it just kind of fell apart. And then, you know, communication stopped. Or when you're trying to talk about safe parking and things are falling apart because there are strict guidelines in the Morgan Hill safe parking. And our ministries, at one point, we did have churches that were willing to do safe parking for us. But when, you know, the advocates again got involved and allowed people and fought having people who had drug issues or other issues that were disrupting what the safe parking really was supposed to be, because it was a transitional program. It's not a program you go and you live in forever. That did scare off our ministries here in Gilroy, that they wanted no part of it. So while we came up with all these ideas, you know, we did meet a lot of resistance out there in different forms. But when I look at Bryce, you did a very good job writing that report. When I, you know, once again, you know, read it over tonight, it's like, yeah, you know, we did accomplish a lot. I just hope someday we can come up and say, hey, you know, these programs actually saved like 50 families the last 2 months, or, you know, something to know that we're really making a difference. But it was a good group. I mean, everyone on the committee was really nice to work with. We all worked hard. We all worked together. There was no discord amongst us. And I want to thank you for being part of the committee. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, Councilmember Baraka?
Yes, I think all three of us, when we started down this path, we thought, you know, about really trying to do something to make a difference. And what we found out is it's pretty hard. The city of Seattle right now is in its 14th year of its 5-year plan to end homelessness. The city of Los Angeles is in like its 23rd year. So it just goes to show that throwing money at the problem doesn't solve it. In Seattle, they spend billions, and next door, I think it's Everett, Washington, they have a zero tolerance. They don't allow camping, and they don't have a homeless problem. In Seattle, it's just really, really bad. So what we found is there's no silver bullet that's going to fix this. There's no right answer. There's a lot of agendas going on in this whole thing. You know, nonprofits making money and raising money, and nobody can really agree on what the next steps should be. But I think what we came up with is a framework to make it better for our homeless residents and safer for our homeless residents and for our Gilroy citizens. So I want to thank Fred and Carol. They were enjoyed working with them, and you know, we spent Saturday's meeting with the three of us and stuff, and that's it for me.
All right. Councilmember Tovar?
Thank you, Mayor. Let me also include, I want to thank our police department and our fire department, because I know, you know, the three of us have met with several of them, just sort of getting their ideas, suggestions, and recommendations on how to sort of tackle this issue. And to my two colleagues, I want to thank you guys. I mean, you both put a lot of work, and I think I've met with you guys way too many times. You know, I love you both, but I don't think I want to meet with you that many times anymore. You know, but I think, again, and you know, we just met we just met the other day, and you know, and like the mayor said earlier, you know, we took a deep dive into this, you know, and of the issues and possible solutions. And I tell you, sometimes, you know, you're hearing some heart-wrenching stories, you know, and I think when we met the other day, I think, you know, at least I was expressing, not necessarily concern, just feeling like we should be doing more, you know. You know, there's more that we can do, you know, because again, we want to help the homeless, but there isn't one solution that we can come up with and say, this is going to fix it all. So I think for me, I was a little, not disappointed, just hoping that this doesn't go away and we continue to fight and work and come up with solutions and ideas, because I think, you know, working as a team, and like Dion said, we worked really well, and I want to thank you guys, because we may not have agreed on everything, but we worked hard to come up with solutions and recommendations. And again, a lot of work is left to be done, and I am hoping that our city staff will follow through on sort of the recommendations and help us move forward on this, because this is something that we're going to have to tackle each and every day. And, you know, again, and like I said, I mean, we put a lot of work into it, and it just feels that we should be doing more, you know. And I think as a council, we can work together and hopefully find more solutions that will benefit, you know, the homeless community, but also our residents of Gilroy. So, again, in closing, again, I want to thank the both of you for your leadership. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to open the public hearing, see if we have any public comments on this.
I don't have any speaker cards.
Okay, closing the public hearing. I have a question. Bryce, this is just received report, right, for all of us. It's received report. But with respect to the unhoused task force that you referred to in the report, what is that made of? That's something that we don't have yet that is going to be created? And what will be the makeup of that? What will be the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, correct. So as you mentioned, Madam Mayor, the task force has not been formed yet.
Right.
And what we're basically going to do is, as we kind of talked about, is kind of engage with all different local service providers, see what the level of interest, what they're doing. So the first step is basically index what each service provider does, and what kind of programs do they have, and then work with them to try to form a task force to basically tackle these issues with recommendations and things as different initiatives come up and are devised to find out the ideal composition of the local service providers to deal with that issue and then attack that one.
So is it only staff members that are on part of this?
No, we'd be looking to engage with local service providers, so Compassion Center.
Staff, but I mean staff from the city of Gilroy. It's just staff members?
Correct.
Councilmember Bracco, with that, actually, the police department does not attend those meetings any longer. They are conducted entirely by Jan Bergstein. I'm sorry if I messed her name up. Shargan, yes, sorry. And so that group has not been involved with the police for quite some time. That's exactly the case. Yes. Yeah. we've asked Jan for her, no. Jan has asked us to facilitate that meeting ongoing. We will have some adjustments to it, but really the area she helps us with is connection to people that we weren't aware of before. And so, yes, it'll continue.
Okay, then. All right, Councilmember Tovar, you have another question?
Yeah, thank you. Jimmy, in regards to recommendation number 12, hiring and quality of life officers, and I'm reading what sort of the next steps are, but again, I think the direction we gave a while back ago was that we were to move forward with this sooner than later. Now, I don't know when this is, what the timeline is in regards to when this is going to happen, but I'm not understanding why we're not there yet. If we know what sort of our budget looks like, and this council has directed city staff to move forward with this, what's the delay?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tovar. When we identified the cost with the quality of life officers, we informed council at that time that we were going to return with the funding options for council to consider. And as part of that, we also informed council that we would wait till the end of the fiscal year previously to see what fund balance we had. And so that report comes back to council in November, at which time we'll make a recommendation on how to fund the quality of life officers.
Okay, so it's coming back in November to move forward on the hiring of quality of life officers.
If council approves the funding plan that we will recommend.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, I was just going to say, so I know we just saw that on the matrix. It was like, I couldn't remember, which November. Okay. So without any other questions then, just a final thank you again. And moving on to the next item. Okay, the next item is item B, report on the Housing Trust Fund's fiscal health. And that also is Bryce.
Yes, Mayor and Council. So this is an introductory report and presentation regarding the Housing Trust Fund, fiscal, basically fiscal trend. There is no action being asked of Council tonight. It is information about a discussion that we're going to have that will continue to the first quarter of 2022. In short, the Housing Trust Fund balance has been decreasing. Over the last 10 years, 9 years has seen a decline. We are still in the midst of an in-depth analysis, and we're coming back to Council with options and recommendations in the first quarter of 2022. But we wanted to raise the flag so that way it didn't surprise Council. And then additionally, we have the Housing Trust Fund / Community Development Block Grant Public Service Grant Cycle that will be kicking off and announcing in January. Now that comes back to Council in April and May during public hearings. So you will receive this report of the fiscal condition or recommendations before Council has to hear that item. So a little bit of background. It was created in 1997, the Housing Trust Fund, to provide a funding source to assist development of affordable housing. And it does this through providing funding through notes secured by deed restrictions and equity share payment agreements for below market rate properties, or BMR, and then also some rent revenue from a few apartments that we have. It's intended to help potential homeowners who would be able to afford somewhat near or somewhat below market rate, but not the full market rate of housing. And then from the sale of those homes in the future, the equity that builds up in the home, then the city gets a share and then comes back into the fund to provide more. The public service grants in this fund began in 2001. Have increased in amount since then. In the city's BMR portfolio, there's 1,962 rental units and about 290 homeownership units, as reported to Council back in April. Again, this is the portfolio that's managed by House Keys under the new contract, which is being funded out of the Housing Trust Fund. So the future discussion that we're going to be bringing back to Council is looking at the fact that expenditures are outpacing revenues, and looking at the long-term future and uses of the Housing Trust Fund. The analysis and options that we're going to be bringing back to Council and asking for comes down to fundamentally three questions. One is, does the city wish to follow or to allow the fund to deplete? Basically, this is the status quo version of options. If not, then is there a way to restructure the fund to become a revolving fund and self-sustaining? And if not, then are there other options that would replenish the fund from other funding sources to keep the programs in place inside the fund? So this slide shows the key, the key aspect and consideration as we were kind of looking through this issue. So on the chart here, you'll notice that there's the blue line and the orange line. The blue line is a historical from 2012 up to the projected 2021. This is the ending fund balance inside the Housing Trust Fund. So in 2012, at the end of the year, there was $4.2 million in fund balance. As of 2021, we're projecting end of $2.71 million. The orange line is looking at the projection for the future. Between the ending of 2012 and 2021, it's averaging about $166,000 decline in fund balance each year. We've basically applied that to the future projection and added to that the House Keys contract. And based on that, we will deplete the fund if no changes in 2029 fiscal year. We are continuing to look at the deed restrictions and looking at the portfolio, trying to enhance our projections for costs to refine that. But this is the picture that we're seeing right now using that straight line average. So again, some of the current options being evaluated is maintaining status quo, let the fund deplete, continuing to perform the functions out of the fund that are currently in there, using what assets the fund has currently, identifying a structure for a replenishment program, and then also potentially looking at revising the use of the funds to reinvest the program income for a revolving fund to come forward. And we'll be presenting those to council again the first quarter of 2022. So again, in conclusion, the Housing Trust Fund is seeing balances declining over the last 10 years. We're continuing to gather information and options for council to consider for future fund and programs, and we'll continue to early 2022. We are proceeding with the CBG and HTF public grants program, but we're structuring the notice and invitation for applications that this will be 1 year. And again, clarifying that there's no guarantee of funding. Just as with each funding cycle, it's up to council to decide what funding is being provided to these organizations. So with that completes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions or comments.
Okay, yes, questions from council. Dion, Councilor Bracco.
Bryce, as long as I've been on the council, we've always been told by our staff that this is self-funding and it doesn't cost the city a dime. And now this is not what we've been told.
Yeah, so the funding sources that have been built up have been generated from efforts by South County Housing when they would construct the homes, and then as part of those deed restrictions, we'd have an equity share. So none of the funds have come from the general fund in the past. What we're seeing now is that at least over the last 10 years, we do have a declining fund balance inside that fund. Part of that deeper analysis is going back even further into history to see how the funds were generated in the beginning, what rates, and basically trying to identify in the past what's triggered the change where it went from revolving fund and building the fund balance to now a decline, and then using that information to help guide decisions and recommendations for the future to bring back to council to see if it can be restored back to revolving fund, or what options could be used to whether it provide more support or the status quo option as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to take a stab at answering that, actually, if I could, because I see your face, and I had a lengthy discussion with Bryce too today. This, for those who've not just been on the council, but who've been in Gilroy long enough, you remember South County Housing when this started, and it was absolutely that, supposed to be completely self-sustaining, because South County Housing, in an effort to help people with down payments, that's really what it was supposed to be. They were the housing developer. Remember the days of Dennis Laylor, Mary Lou Mazzoni, right? When they were trying to help with lower income type housing, but definitely below market rate. And that this plan, this housing trust fund, the money would come from a shared equity arrangement from the houses that you were helping people buy when they sold them. And there could also be some rents, and there was also interest income on deferred loans and rehab loans, too, for the Sobrato apartments and the Connell apartments. So that's how it was started. Over the years, the reason why this is coming before us now and why staff is preparing us for what's going to come later is because in addition to keep a revolving fund that was meant to help people with home loans and such, money's been coming out of this housing trust fund for grants, for things that have gone to Compassion Center, St. Joseph Center, Project Sentinel. I mean, all these things that are also for the assistance and prevention of things that would lead to homelessness. But the revenue side, there haven't been any more homes going in producing to put the money in. So that's where the problem is this is going to end up at zero in 9 years unless the original way that this was established in the first place to have money is changed. And without South County Housing, because that is no longer, we've not been able, there's been no housing developer that is pushing this. And so where we are today now is we've got House Keys that came into the picture 2 or 3 years ago, whose contract is jumping numbers that you don't even see here on the schedule in our staff report. They're jumping starting with the fiscal year that we're in, July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022, because they're also managing all the inclusionary housing that we have. So Alexander Station, it isn't just these, and there are just more demands placed on the money without the revenue source being there. All the rent income you see here is from the Cherry Blossom apartments, and that's, there's a handful of those, but that's where that rent is from, and the interest is from these rehab loans and these deferred loans. So it's no longer going to be what it was established to be, and that is why we need to decide where this is going to go. Okay, so I know, well, Councilmember Armendariz, you had your hand up, and then I'll go to Councilmember Hilton.
What kind of fees or funding sources do other cities use? I'm sure this will be in the report, but can you tell us or give us an idea what kind of fees or resources other cities use to supplement this?
There's a wide variety. We're working with House Keys to get, since they have a lot of different exposure, different cities to pull that from. But I've seen a lot of cities that use essentially former redevelopment agencies. So there's two components to it. There's economic development, tax financing for that, but there's also a housing component to the RDA as well. And so a lot of cities are using that because they're able to keep the tax increment financing and from what they've built before, and they become the successor agency to those housing, the housing portion, for lack of a better term, of the RDAs. So a lot of cities are using that. But that's one of the items that we're working on right now is to get those options and see what other options for cities where we don't have that RDA from RDA operation that happened. What are other cities doing outside of that former tax increment?
Have you seen cities similar to ours use linkage fees? Corporate linkage fees, have you seen cities use those?
I haven't seen that yet, but we'll definitely take a look into that.
It'll be explored. Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. So I'm really glad that we're having this discussion now. So yeah, corporate linkage fees, really leveraging the relationship that we have with House Keys, I think is important. I'm sure to me, it looks like that's one of the lulls that happened. It was just program was kind of put aside. We were just doing the public service grants without, keeping it going. So no, I do not wish to see the fund deplete. I think that there are ways, and House Keys, again, leverage them. They have that nonprofit side and the for-profit side. They have relationships outside of Gilroy to be able to go after, corporations and such that are giving money to cities to fund trusts like this and projects. I also want to rely heavily on our Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization Committee for their expertise and recommendations. They're one of the hardest working committees that we have, and they've been trying their hardest to solve our affordable housing crisis. I'm also not in favor of stopping what they're doing with the public service grants as well. And I think that House Keys, again, can do something, whether it's allowing them to go out and purchase, finding homes to renovate and put into our BMR, I think is something that they have expertise on, have done it in other cities. And also next week on Monday, we'll be talking about an inclusionary housing ordinance. That's something that that's a missed opportunity. It's not the whole entire answer, but it's definitely a missed opportunity that we've had to put more units into our BMR. Thank you.
Okay. Did I open the public hearing yet? Okay. So is there anybody from the public? Okay.
Ron Perkish.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Corporate linkage fees. The grand jury report that I sent out to everybody, I believe, actually mentioned that as a stipulation that should be considered for helping the housing. However, and matter of fact, in that grand jury report, it stated that we should follow the guidelines set up by Seattle, Washington. Well, Seattle, Washington tried it, and Boeing has moved out. They're moving out of their last facility because they're not going to put up with any corporate linkage fees. Amazon, the president of Amazon, is now threatening to do that. So I think when you mention items like that, you have to look at what's happening in an area that's done it, and it's not working. So thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
No.
Okay. Closing the public hearing. Back to council. This is a receive, report, and provide direction. So has everybody said what they want to say to provide direction? Okay, my direction is it needs a revenue source. and yeah, and I don't know what corporate linkage fees we have in Gilroy, but that I'm not well versed in. I haven't researched that to know how that could help. So I'm not going to comment there. I just think that the original purpose and where the revenue was and how this was a self-sustaining fund is no longer. That's what the council needs to appreciate today, and know that when staff comes back with whatever they come back with, it's because what we have here today is going to be gone in 9 years or less, absent something different. Okay? All right. That's it for that report. And we move on to Jimmy, City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Member City Council. Tonight I want to give you a brief update on the Surplus Lands Act, more specifically the 342 acres at Hecker Pass, Gilroy Gardens, Hillside. If you recall, as part of the Surplus Lands Act process, we were required by the state of California to advertise the availability of surplus land for the potential development of housing, or for a developer to provide a proposal or negotiate with the city on using some of that land for housing projects. My report tonight will tell you that we did not receive any housing offers from developers and nothing along those lines, but we did receive two notices of inquiry. One which is from the Santa Clara County Parks and Recreation Department, looking at a potential opportunity for them to acquire the land in order for parks and for trails. And according to Government Code Section 54220, which includes the Surplus Land Act for housing, we are required to discuss with them the opportunity for, what they're proposing. We have 90 days in which to negotiate with them. We have not contacted them yet. We just closed the period on October 11th, and so I will be contacting the county here shortly. And then we received a second, just a notification that the Acquisition Investment Group was interested in the property as well. And when we asked them what for, they kind of aligned with agricultural use. So that does not fall under, in my opinion, the Surplus Lands Act, but we will still, out of courtesy, reach out to that organization and just see exactly where they're going. We are, as we've stated before, one of the first cities to go through this process, so we have walked very gently to make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to. And so with that, I want to ask Andy to maybe help me out a little bit. I don't want to talk in the legal world because that's not where I live, but really what we are entering next is the legal process, and Andy's going to help us make sure we do it correctly. So.
Yes, that's correct, Jimmy. Thank you. The Surplus Lands Act actually, when it first came into existence, was designed to protect open space. This is before housing got added to it, which was actually quite recent, because the original intent was that when cities were selling off land that was open space, the idea was it shouldn't just automatically go for development, even though the cities would prefer that perhaps for revenue generation, but rather if there was an opportunity for some public agency to buy it for open space, then that was what the law was designed to encourage. The housing thing is new, and that actually is in the last few years, and that got added to the Surplus Lands Act This property is zoned open space and obviously is not very suitable for housing, so it's not surprising that we didn't get any offers. What we now are required to do, we had a 60-day period of availability. We now are required to talk to the county, and within 90 days, either make a deal with them or not make a deal. We're not required to make a deal, but we have to negotiate in good faith, and we'll have to be thinking about what that really means in this context. The other proposal, if it's for agricultural use, is not within the confines. Jimmy's correct. That is neither an open space use under the Act nor a housing use. So that is not an offer that would, apparently is a serious offer within the scope of our obligations. But we do need to talk to the county, and so we'll have to start doing that.
Thank you, Andy. So the final step here in this process is then, as we discuss with the county, we will be in actual real property negotiations, and so you will see, the public will see things on closed session for council. However, due to the confidentiality of those negotiations, we have to do those in closed session, and so that will be on your November 1st agenda. That concludes my report. Thank you.
I have a question. Okay, Dion was first, and then Rebecca.
Jimmy, this was before your time, but we spent a lot of money in the downtown at their request to wire it and put speakers up and a sound system, but the music is never playing. I believe the Downtown Association is supposed to be in charge of it. Is that something you can look into and let us know why it's never on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have any specific requests for the DJ? My question, Jimmy, is do you have any updates on the technology, on the microchips that are in hard demand?
The only update I have for you is not good.
Never mind.
So we've last we're told November. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we'll be ready in January when we come back, because we discussed earlier it's really limiting some of our engagement. We'd love to do more things in Spanish, and the technology will allow us to do so. So I will keep you posted.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, city attorney's reports.
No report.
All right, then with that, we are adjourning to the study session of October 25th. All right, see you all then. Oh, that study session will be in person, yes, right here.
Yeah, for now I don't.